Hello, Uganda. Good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Hot Seat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Amara. It's Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. We're in mid-January. Thank God we've reached here. You know, sometimes there's always a joke, and when we reach the second week of January, even the first week, some people say, are you sure they paid us in December? Are you sure this January is only 30 days long or not 60? Because everybody feels the pinch. But this is going to be a year full of action, especially political action. Beginning next week on the 20th of January, the voters' register will be displayed across the country. And that shows you that we are getting ready to a heated campaign that is going to take people across this country to ask for the mandate to lead. Let me introduce my panel this evening. My Wednesday panel. From the Uganda Management Institute, I have Professor Gerard Karieja. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here. Good evening, Moses and Patrick and our listeners.
And yes, from the President's office, we have Senior Presidential Advisor, Mr. Moses Biaranga. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Patrick, my colleague in the studio, Gerard, and our listeners up there.
Ntungamo's best is missing in action, but according to my producer, he's somewhere in Ntungamo in his coffee farm. And probably we shall get him online if needs be. And Stephen is on top of that situation. I mean, Mr. Kodibat Mushari. Let me begin with you, Professor Gerard Karieja. You know, just Monday, when the voters' register is display exercise begins, that means now the campaign also, in a way, are entering another phase. It has been subtle. People have been, you know, giving out money, visiting, whatever, helping here and there. Some posters are also happening, especially online. But beginning Monday, then we're going to see things change and maybe take another step. Do you think this 2025 general election campaign time is likely to be any different from what we've seen before?
No, Patrick, you know my mind on this one. I don't think it's going to be any different. But maybe what will happen on the 20th, I think that a good number of Ugandans will want to participate in the election. So it is important and helpful for them to go and make sure that they are on the register if they are interested in voting for their candidates, because that now begins the journey of whom you want to elect, how you want to be elected, and whether you can participate in the electoral process. But for those who are seeking political positions, I think that is now opportunity for them to start scrutinizing the credibility of both the process and the products from the Electoral Commission. And at the same time, trying to create a linkage with the population. I'm sure many of them are going to volunteer to be educators on what to do, how to do it, and when to do it as a way of entry into the population, sending messages, encouraging people to check the registers and to ensure that they are on the register. Because the beginning point to have voters is to have registered voters registered with the Electoral Commission. So if I'm interested in an electoral seat, I'm also interested in ensuring that my potential voters are registered, and maybe even those whom I have doubt on and I hope to convince are also registered. But for those that I'm outrightly sure and convinced that they don't want to vote for me, most people will be reluctant to encourage them to participate and vote. So,
you know, as far as I am concerned, I have missed many opportunities to vote personally, sometimes because
and that raises questions on your civic duty and
yes,
virtue.
But this time around, I am so determined to carry on my civic duty because I'm registered in Ngezi somewhere in Kenya. I must take either a bus or drive. But this
as a voter or as a candidate?
As a voter. As a candidate, I've been thinking about it, but because of the commercialization of politics, I realized that's not a route.
But the President Jordan said we should highly decommercialize politics. I don't know what you interpret.
He said that as well many times, but the truth is, at a constituency level, less than 500 million on your account, you shouldn't be negotiating. That's it. Mr. Moses Biaranga, thank you so much once again for joining us. You've had the views from Professor Karieja. For you, you are one of the people behind the scenes of the NRM. I know at least you know what is going to be even in the manifesto before some of us get to know, because of your seniority in the party structures, but also
I'm not in the party.
You're not in the party structures, but as a senior presidential advisor, the seniority to the chairman of the party, you can understand more. Is this likely to be any different? Are you in any way in a mood to power? Are you in any way like panicky that perhaps Ugandans want to return you? Because when you're an incumbent, sometimes you could be in a panic.
No, there's nothing to panic about. Definitely they're going to win the next election. You see, the election.
Do you even know the candidate?
Eh?
Do you know the candidate?
NRM will have a candidate.
Okay.
And that candidate will win. The NRM candidate will win at both presidential, at parliamentary, will win. We don't have much opposition. In any case, the few are there are disorganized. And I think even where last time there were some mistakes, people realized that they made mistakes by not voting for President Museveni and NRM. So this time round, they're going back to what they have been used to. So, but I would urge Ugandans to take the process seriously, because some of the things people talk about which happen in the election process are either people not minding their duty, as you're calling it civic duty. Take, for instance, the Electoral Commission has announced the display of registers starting on Monday, 20th. And after, I think another process which will follow will be registration of those who have reached 18 in between, because
and those who would want to be voters, maybe.
Those who have never registered, but would want to be voters, register.
I don't know. I've ever registered. I've ever voted, but I've not been voting. I want this time around.
So this is a time to basically, in case somebody died and you know them, and they're in your area, there's a form one supposed to fill to have those people removed. If somebody is on the display, and there's a claim that is from that village or polling area, and you don't know them, you raise those issues and say these people don't stay here, so that the register is cleaned. But then you hear people complaining at the end, there are people who came and voted for you who are not supposed to be voted from here, but they were the names on the register. But did you follow the process at the registration, at the display time? So this is a very serious exercise. The parties, for instance, which of course the parties have, individuals may not have a big stake, but the parties must have a big stake. If you have a party structure like in NRM, the village teams will be up there, because at least they fairly know the members of the NRM in the areas. They also know others who may not be NRM, but they can say this was not it doesn't reside in our area. So they can point out all those things and be able to have a clean register. And for those who have turned 18 in between the last election and now, and those who maybe hadn't registered, they were already 18 but hadn't registered, are free to register during the period of updating the voter register. And then we wait for other processes of nomination for this and nomination for that. But this is an important exercise which people must take seriously.
But you speak with a lot of confidence about winning, even though election is in 2026. And
even though it was tomorrow.
You speak with a lot of confidence, and you actually say the opposition is disorganized. But in a real democracy, doesn't that really, show us in bad light as a country that we have an opposition that is so weak? I know your job is to retain NRM in power and the chairman in that seat, but also in a functioning democracy, you need some serious opposition that can also, help you be better.
Yeah, but what do you do about them? What do you do about them? Because see, in any polity, those winners and losers. In Japan, I remember after the Second World War, a single party, I think it was the Labour Party, was in power for 55 years. Would you call that? Would you say Japan was a democracy?
Yeah, but you said so, it became the second biggest economy for all that time.
Yeah, It was a very big country.
So what is there to show for the 40-something years? It's where
there's a lot to show. There's a lot to show compared to where we were 40 years ago. There's a lot which has improved.
So the issue is where we want to be, Moses.
No, but we're somewhere. But then, if by where we were 40 years ago we're not there, what happened in between 62 and 1986? If that hadn't happened, it would be different.
Let me use the general Mujish analogy that if you are traveling to Jinja and you start at 6 a.m. to go to Jinja, and by midday you are somewhere in Buyogere, yes, you are moving. But that's not where you're supposed to be.
You should have asked General Muntu why did he go to the bush. Was that part of his upbringing? He went to the bush because there were some issues which had to be sorted. So we have been moving.
And he parted with you because you never sorted the issue.
Well, we have been moving. Well, let him go and sort them. Where he is, he has a party. We let his party win, and he sorts them out if he thinks he can. But the point I'm making is that I'm confident about NRM winning. I'm confident about what we are doing. There are things we could do better, but at least we're on the right track. We could do much better. There's no doubt about it. If we are all, in terms of, especially the government side, forget about the party side, if the government side was all focused in the same direction, but sometimes you're pulling this way, others are pulling the other side. Otherwise, especially like now, when we started this PDM 2 years ago, I'm happy with the progress so far. Today, my staff were in Namutumba, in one of the parishes, meeting all the PDM beneficiaries of that parish. And I was getting reports about what's happening there. People are moving. About 250 in one parish so far have received the parish where they were in today. Tomorrow they're going to be in Luka. The other day they're going to be in the Jinja Rural, doing the same thing. So, for me, when you look at other government programs in those areas, extension of water, you find that in most of the areas, like villages without water are less than 20%. To me, that's a very good progress. People have access to clean, safe water within a radius of 1 kilometer. At first, they used to talk of radius of 5 kilometers, but now its radius has reduced 1 kilometer, and they have access to water. When you look at sub-counties without access to electricity, they are getting less and less as more is being spent there. When you look at parishes without a government secondary school, primary school, I think now it's only about 20% of the parishes without a government primary school. When you look at sub-counties without a government secondary school, about 26%, according to the UBOS report. So, to me, this is a good progress.
All right. Mr. Moses Byarhanga, Senior Presidential Advisor, and Professor Jared Kareja from Uganda Management Institute. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to ask whether really now election is not just a ritual, because it looks like it's just a ritual that is bringing more of the same. And yes, there's some progress, but the progress we get, does it correspond with the time for those who are managing the affairs of our country have taken in the lead? We'll be right. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening, Mr. Moses Byarhanga, Senior Presidential Advisor, and have Professor Jared Kareja from Uganda Management Institute. Professor Kareja, it appears the issue of elections in Uganda is more of just ritual, just ritualistic, and it's more of the same. Sometimes it's like we have a template. Some people will be, bullets will be fired, some people will be killed somewhere, some people will cry foul, and then they'll go to court, and then, is it really authentic? Does it actually give us a representation, the people's will to be heard through a ballot box, and we get leaders that we actually deserve? Or it is the person who pays the piper is calling the tune, not necessarily you being the right person to lead?
I think that a number of cases have been to court, and from the judgments one can read part of what the process is, and also the other part of the process is seen. We observe it, we experience it, we live it. I think globally democracy is being under question. There is a paradox of democracy. there is also a decline in democracy. And also democracy has demonstrated that sometimes it can produce unexpected leaders, maybe even those that may not take the country or a constituency forward. And we've seen that at different levels. But coming back to our own situation, I think in terms of defining democracy from the Western concept, we have overemphasized what we call procedural democracy. The process, registration, vote, count, and so forth. But even with that, there is still some sour mouth in a few people because they think that there are some parts of the process that are not as transparent as they ought to. So I think the challenge with the Electoral Commission now, in order to heighten its reputation, is to increase its level of transparency in the way it conducts its processes, and also to increase its level of awareness so that people know what to expect, where to expect it, and how it is going to be done. 2, it is to do with these other actors in the electoral process, particularly the security agencies. I understand towards the end of the year, a number of them were undergoing training jointly by the Electoral Commission and other spaces. I hope that training, among other things, is to what extent do we manage, for example, protests? Do we manage violent people with a force that does not necessarily lead to death and so forth? And also for us, the population, how can we express dissent without degenerating into political violence? So I think all the different actors now, we are being called upon to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes that we have performed before, both at state and non-state level, and also not to give excuse to state actors, especially the security services, to be extreme in the use of force because they have the legitimate and monopoly over the coercive arm of the state. So they shouldn't be given an excuse. They shouldn't be given to clobber people. So I think the biggest burden, in my view, is on the Electoral Commission so that its conduct is not put into question at any point.
Moses, what needs to be done to safeguard the integrity of the army so that the image is not again, put in the gutter of the Ugandan politics, where they say the army is doing this, the army is partisan, the army is beating people, the army is violent? What do you need to do so that we have an election without blaming the army having getting involved?
What has the army done?
No, but there have been many accusations, including even court cases where the army gets involved into an election, gets into partisan politics.
See, the most
when 50 people were killed or more, 100 in November 2020,
yeah, but
they were shot by the army.
That was a riot. They were handling a riot. Why did the people go on riot in the first place? So you see, you come to blame the army or the security agencies for that matter. There was remember we were under COVID guidelines of having meetings and not rallies. The people in opposition, they don't want to hear that. They want to organize rallies. So the police, I think, was it in the Busoga area, arrested Bobby Wine, and then people go to, because he was violating the guidelines as given by Ministry of Health and WHO on how to conduct ourselves as the whole. What we were following was what the whole world was following. If you entered the plane, in fact, at one time even the planes could not even move. When they started even moving, they would do jump seats and so forth to make sure that people are not close to themselves. So somebody says, no, for me I want to hold a rally, public rally, and put people at stake, people's lives at stake. Police says, no, that's not allowed. Then they got hold of you, people go and riot. Now, and if they were just demonstrating, that would be another matter. But a riot and demonstration are two different things. People go on and riot, and in the process of bringing down the riots, some people died. So now
some people shoot dead.
Yes. So if somebody come and say, "Oh, the army did this," but surely why were people rioting? The army didn't cause a riot in the first place. So it's unfortunate some people died, but surely it is sometimes the indiscipline of the political actors who should now try to act differently before you bring in the hospital. Because the army, that's why they are law. If people make mistakes, they say someone so was involved here, fine, you go to court, and if you want to talk about democratizing. The fact that you can take a case to court involving an army officer and maybe it's found guilty, that's good enough. So there's a democracy. What else would you do? You cannot say people are saints, but have a system which can reprimand those who do wrong, whether they are army or not army officers. That's what you need. But as for on a great extent, I was at least here in the center of Kampala during the campaign, the whole campaign period. I went and voted. I didn't see any army officer at my polling station. During the counting, I was there. They counted at my polling station in Uziga. I watched whatever happened. I got the results and calling other places. People were doing the same thing was happening. So many people say, "Oh, the army got it." In about 23 or so thousand or 28,000 polling stations in Uganda at the time. Today, this is going to be much more. Where we could have had incidences of the very few cases. But on the whole, the election was fair and fair. The campaign process was fair and fair, apart from those who disobeyed the COVID guidelines.
Professor Kareja, considering a couple of months back we are having a lot of cases in the Kenyan capital Nairobi, and actually even other cities in Kenya, with the Gen Z, taking a certain line. Do you think that is likely to take root in Uganda? Do you think the Ugandan Gen Z, Generation Z, are likely to be very different this time around, very assertive, having learned from their Kenyan counterparts?
I doubt that on three grounds. One, of course, part of it is again, I want really to put the pedestal for the Electoral Commission very high. If the Electoral Commission is doing its work very transparently, then there is electoral hygiene, and when there is electoral hygiene, there is minimal contestation. Two, the events of the last election, the violence during the last election, and also the management of politicians, especially from the opposition, during this period up to now, including the arrest of Dr. Chiza Besigye, regardless of the merit of his case, has a chilling effect to those that would want to use protests, would want to use demonstrations as an opportunity to express their voices.
Not necessarily going on the street, but organizing themselves using the new media, social media and all that, to have a certain voice that is assertive, some kind of
The potential of social media in Uganda to translate into an avalanche of votes is very limited.
And why is that?
The majority of the population that votes is not on social media.
But they are getting there now, at least.
How many people have a smartphone compared to the registered voters? The penetration of internet. Actually, most Gen Zs are not.
So are you saying
maybe if you look at the dichotomy, if you say the more urban,
some kind of a consensus from those at a certain level, some kind of an elite consensus that is likely to impact on the voting patterns to the rest of the voting population?
I'm seeing more young people demanding more space at all electoral levels, from local councils up to parliamentary level. Some may even come up as new presidential candidates from the ones that we have so far, because they are looking at their demographics. But I'm seeing that it will be more of entry and expanding and increasing space. But now everybody is in overdrive to co-opt or coerce them. So they are in that flux. On one side, they are being courted and co-opted. On the other side, they're being coerced and criminalized and cursed. And the social media that we're talking about has become also a space for that. The moments that I've seen what is on social media, either group is either condemning or cajoling people whom they disagree with. So I see them in that perspective, but I don't see them overturn what we've seen before.
All right.
For example, what NUP did in Uganda, I do not see young people making an upset that 60% of members of parliament are going to be people below 30 years or 35. I don't expect that.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break and the hot seat will be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the hot seat. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guest tonight, Mr. Moses Byarhanga and Professor Jared Karija. Mr. Moses Byarhanga, we had the other election under COVID restrictions. Of course, the rallies were restricted. People were campaigning on TV and radio and also having meetings. But this time around, we are assuming there's not going to be mpox or maybe another virus coming from those suspected places normally where it comes from. Assuming all is well, it's going to be different because we missed the serious campaign last time, and here we're going to see full blast campaign, full throttle. That alone, if in Uganda NUP was able to mobilize themselves, even though they're mobilizing using meetings and radios and all that, you're going to see a different opponent, and I'm sure for you, the political strategists.
No. You see, I'm telling you that even here in Uganda, where NUP, first of all, you need to understand the Uganda voting. Chagulanyi got polled 1,900,000 votes.
Yes, you've made that argument.
Yeah, because it's the same question.
So President Museveni didn't lose that much.
President Museveni polled 1,050,000 votes. So the difference was about 900,000. And the 900, out of the 900,000, 500,000 was between Kampala and Wakiso. Outside it was only 400,000. So to me, that's not a very big challenge. So the issue is Kampala Wakiso, how do you approach it and how do you handle it? That's why during the break I was saying, you see, most of the voting here during COVID time, I forgot about the restrictions on rallies. People were restricted from earning money because of the lockdowns. So there was that protest vote. So today there's no protest to that in that line that people are not earning income because of lockdowns, blah blah blah. So the lockdown worked against us, especially in most of these urban areas, and the most highly urbanized in Uganda is Kampala and Wakiso. That's why there was that in my own analysis. That's why there was that big margin. But beyond that, there's not any other region or sub-region where NUP won. President Museveni won in all other sub-regions. And I'm sure in political mobilization, you do two things. Consolidate where you have won, and that one is being done. Then, in where you didn't do well, make inroads and approaches. That's why if you take the American campaign as an example, what they call battleground states, that's why all people are running for rallies. In these other places, they knew this is blue, this is red. So you'd find maybe one of the candidates doesn't even go to some of the areas knowing that is Kamara's or anyway. This is for so and so. So in our strategy, we consolidate where we won, and we are penetrating where we didn't do well. Also, as I said earlier, that the circumstances are now different. There's no COVID. Nobody will say, oh, I am able to make money, I'm staying home, I don't have everything. So there's the protest. It can be there because of other reasons, but not to the level it was that time of people having no income as a result of lockdown.
So Wakiso and Kampala is your battleground?
Definitely. There's no doubt about that.
And in Mbarara and other places, that's the firewall. Nobody gets there.
Those are yellow areas. Those are yellow areas. There's no big... But we shall know that we are not putting in the effort. But definitely it will be much easier there. I don't see any penetration from NUP in those areas. It hasn't happened, and it will not happen. If it couldn't happen then, it will not happen now. So in the areas of Karamoja, areas of Acholi, areas of West Nile, areas of Lango, as Obunyoro, all that will continue to make
for President Yoweri Museveni to keep, maybe taking some of those regions, like how Moses is saying. I know some people will be disputing that, but is it his message, or it is what he has actually done?
Yeah, before I get to that, I just want to add that other than the grievance of low income and limited income, especially for people who have been dealing in cash economy, people also had other grievances with the regime and NRM. And since Moses has said they had approaches and strategies, maybe they have, and inroads, maybe they have answered those grievances. But if those grievances have not been answered and rectified, be sure
the biggest
there will be another storm.
Mm-hmm.
There will be another storm, and I think also this coming by-election will be one of the experiments for us to see how much they have made inroads on the Kawempe North. So getting back to the question of what increases, if you've noticed, the NRM strategy, or President Yoweri Museveni's strategy, has been emphasizing what aggregates the interests of the majority. And the majority of Ugandans are rural-based. They are in the informal economy. They are largely less literate than the minority. And also, they are largely rural. And that is his electoral base. And a number of mass programs, mass education, mass increase in quantity of infrastructural projects, and now PDM redistribution of cash to individuals partly increases affinity to him and also affinity to the party. But I would still think that the legitimacy of NRM on the basis of performance, in my view, is the smaller percentage. The population expects more, would like to have more, especially in terms of social services.
Smaller percentage on the basis of performance, but yet they'll bring you back into power?
Yes.
What explains that? Because all you need is for them to be in power and perform.
The power of incumbency, the person of President Yoweri Museveni, the historical conditions and situations. If you notice, there is always comparison with the past and minimal comparison to the future. But now we know that there are a number of presidential pledges. Some of them are people are running out of patience, so it's up to them to rapidly meet those pledges. Otherwise, they may face some resistance or some apathy or some reduction in votes or some stuntedness. But I know that they know all this more than me, because that's what they preoccupy themselves with, and it's their mandate and duty.
Some of these pledges President Museveni makes during campaigns, and they are not fulfilled. For example, I know where I come from in my region, they're quite a number. Most of them are roads, actually. How does he get back to the people? And after he have promised this and he's assured them, and then nothing has happened?
No, but if you look like your area where you come from, the major roads are tarmac.
Yeah, but see, those roads have been tarmacked. He has, for quite some time, he's made many other commitments for other roads.
No, you mentioned roads, but I said, you see, people gauge, they know, first of all, in terms of road infrastructure, up-country roads, the roads connecting major towns in Uganda are now tarmacked. If you look about Toro area, like for instance, Fort Potro Kasese is a tarmac road. Fort Potro, it used to be tarmac, but it had run down. It had really gone so bad. It was redone. Fort Potro Bundubuju is a new tarmac road. Fort Potro Kamwenge up to Ibanda is a new tarmac road. Now from Kinjojo up to Kibale, it's a new tarmac road. Now,
yeah, but those are not in the pledges. They were the pledges.
They were to pledge at some time. They were pledged at some time. So, in terms of road infrastructure, we have done so well, especially up-country roads. Even the city roads, the monies are there. At least now, most of Kampala is like a construction site. It was not lack of money, but also it was also management issues, related management issues, because during the money for construction of Kampala roads was obtained like 3-4 years ago. But some leaderships there have not been doing a good job. But anyway, at least now they're being done, better late than never. Now, when you come to, you're asking about how come people elect him. If you go and explain that, yes, we promised ABCD, we're unable to achieve ABC, but we have achieved this. So people will gauge from what they know about you. Then, on the contrary, you never see those in opposition with any serious manifesto at all. Other than Museveni Agende, they don't make a proposal that for us we will do this. Even when you talk about the opposition being the alternative government must have an agenda, probably different from yours. If I present a budget, present a policy position, what do they have on the contrary? How do they not agree with you? So even wonder now, if a voter, somebody say, for instance, I'm giving an example, that if you look at, say, our policy is having a primary school per parish. As of now, 80% of the parishes each has a primary school. Our policy is having a secondary school in every sub-county. As of now, 76% of the sub-counties have. So the ones who don't have, because the serious ones have, they know they will also come to them because you're promising to do that. You go for water. 80% of the villages in Uganda each has a clean water source, and that one also has reduced some waterborne diseases when people would get that water. Used to hear about cholera in Kampala during every rainy season in the past. These days it rains and it goes off, you never hear about cholera. What happened? Because of access to clean water. Cholera is like now forgotten in Uganda. 10-20 years ago it was a norm. Every rainy season, Mulago would be filled with cholera patients. But now it's no longer there. So people, if you look about immunization in as the public health matter, all the children now are all immunized, except those where their parents have not taken them for immunization. It's not lack of immunizers or the vaccines. Everything is always there. So why do people vote for Museveni? They have security. Why do people vote for Museveni? It's because of this. These achievements. The people know them. You might come here and talk whatever you want to talk, but people there see what is happening in their areas. Now, talk about PDM. That financial inclusion, as of now, we have reached about 2.5 million households in Uganda have received PDM money. Now, Kamara, what does that mean?
You bought the election?
No, not vote. You see, people are seeing a government working for them.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break.
KFM.
Well, welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guest this evening are Professor Jared Kareja from Uganda Management Institute and Mr. Moses Byarhanga, Senior Presidential Advisor. We are having the voter register display beginning just on Monday next week. But Uganda's opposition to end for quite some time, Dr. Kizza Besigye, is in jail. And other people who would maybe have wanted to challenge the system or challenge the NRM, this provides some kind of a chilling effect, or in fact, it intimidates them. Won't this have a serious impact, considering that it's supposed to come back to court, I think, in February? That will be even a week or more after the display of voters register. What do you make of that?
So I just think that the chaos in the opposition, if you notice now, it's a bit quiet, meaning that the activity to create chaos in the political parties has reached a point where maybe it has reached its nodal point. So if it was externally influenced, it means that the results have already been achieved. And if it was on its own volition, then they are now going into a place of stability, but very scattered and very conflictual. If you notice, for example, like now, the big fight from NUP is within NUP than NUP against NRM or others. as an example. But in addition to other things that make President Yoweri Museveni keep coming back at NRM is what I would call administrative capture. The whole subnational administrative system of the local government, especially the elected leaders, the LC system. Yes, it is a government of Uganda system, but it is largely constructed that it mostly mobilizes people for NRM and it disorganizes people that are pushing for self and other determination. So you will find even situations where a mayor, an LC5 chairperson is from the opposition, but at presidential level, you find that President Yoweri Museveni has won. So that regulatory and administrative capture is a very strong structural element that will not be very easy to uproot for any opposition candidate to do.
So, you mean
but on the sharing
level, in some cases, where people cannot even make a difference between the NRM, the party,
but you see, this was
and the government.
But this was constructed from the bush, and when they came from the bush, the Chiza BCJs and others in their commissariat reinforced it, and it became part of the Ugandan political structure. But the political structure was designed to support the revolution and to mobilize for it and not against it. So you are moving against a tide. You are moving against a system that has been reinforced itself. And if you notice, the elections of the LCs, especially the lower you go, the less regular it becomes. So you have local councillors that have cemented themselves, that have embedded themselves, and every moment of power is in them. They have quasi-judicial, they have political, they have administrative, they have now even fiscal power through the PDM. So every moment of the state is around them. Is embedded in them. And most of them take it as a privilege to serve because the opportunity has been offered by, provided by, ensured by. So that political architecture.
I see Moses smiling the way.
No, that political architecture that NRM has created
is administrative capture.
Is administrative capture of the state infrastructure for the purposes of mobilizing for NRM, mobilizing for
capture of the state infrastructure to mobilize for
and then
NRM. That is what gives you the advantage, Moses.
And coming to
the advantage.
Coming to the question of fear, chilling effect, for sure, we may debate on the extent, but I saw the response when Dr. Kiza Besigye was arrested. The reaction of the population is largely on social media space and more into organized aid clubs like the Law Society, like the Civil Society, like the academia and the courts of law. Rightly so. But I did not see a spontaneous reaction from the population, even in terms of calling in on talk shows, even in terms of gathering, even in terms of thought leaders like religious leaders or others raising questions. Even the media is shy. I don't know to what extent Moses has been able to mobilize. So the point I'm trying to raise is that the way the population has reacted to the events going on is partly because they are reflecting on what they have experienced before, which is the repressive arm of the state. And so there is fear, there is apathy, there is reduced appetite for either political violence, if you want to call it that way, or for aggressive expression.
Okay. Moses, what do you make of
political
that?
interest?
He's touched quite his analysis, quite his administrative capture, the refuse of the state infrastructure into the party, the fear and the intimidation. And that gives you an advantage because people have been placed in that corner.
Who has been intimidated?
But he's been telling you.
No, I don't agree. That's what I'm asking. I don't agree with that there's intimidation. I don't agree that there's a state capture. How come if you capture the state and you win, you lose Kampala? Kampala is not part of the state. Is it Antihoya, Busoga, where we lost part of the state?
Yeah, you take some and give some. You're also clever. You give some areas.
That's not.
Capture is not a census.
No, that's true. So those talk, that's elite talk here in the studios, in the universities. But for people in the villages, for them, they know the difference between opposition and the government.
Moses, my LC chairperson has been there for the last 20 years.
Elected or unelected?
Both.
Yeah, so what do you need? So what's
when the time for election is there, he's elected.
Yeah, so that's okay.
And he pledges allegiance not to the voters.
You see,
he pledges allegiance not to.
No. They wouldn't elect him. You see, if you go to some politics like in America, you find the senators who have served for 20, 25 years. I have a friend of mine, a congressman, the lower house, who has served like 20 years and being re-elected in his own area. So for your area...
But how often has he changed political parties?
No, he has been in one party. So...
You see, the NRM, the LC structure is...
Wait, for one to be...
I'll come later.
Our time is actually gone by voice.
For one to be elected many times, it's because of service, not because it's not a state capture that somebody is elected many times and like that. So there's no intimidation. When we go for elections here, people go and enter that ballot place. The polling place, pick their ballot, tick when they want to tick, without anybody saying, if you don't tick like this, this will happen to you.
Okay.
That's what has happening. So when somebody says that
in a few seconds,
intimidated,
parting shot, Moses, and then
my parting shot is that first of all, Ugandans should take the process of voter display and updating of the register seriously.
Okay, Moses, thank you, and Professor, your parting shot in 10 seconds.
The LC system, which I consider administrative capture, it is because it is an aftermath of the NRM system, and therefore it is inconsistent with party politics.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hot Seat, and I hand you over now to Nalwoga with KFM News at 8.
The hottest debate on all relevant topics, live on KFM's Hot Seat tonight. KFM's Hot Seat covers all the relevant topics every weekday, 7 to 8 p.m. Precise, to the point, and accurate. This is KFM News.